Now, people who are born between the late 90s to the early 2000s are called Gen Z. And TVS tell us that the Gen Z are so demanding from an automobile these days that they've become a segment in themselves. In fact, TVS has been catering to this Generation Z with vehicles like a Street Fighter in the Apache or a peppy scooter in the Ntorq, even an electric vehicle in the iQube. And now they have a power commuter for this segment. Is this the Raider 125? Now, if I was a 20-something, I would look at this as a more economical, a more accessible alternative to the Apache. I would certainly buy it in yellow, and if I bought one, I would name it Bumblebee.
Speaking of names, the Raider has finally turned out to be a street bike, unlike an adventure tourer that many speculated when TVS first registered this model name. Zoomers applying for their license could spot similarities between the DRL signature of the Raider and the traffic sign of a bridge. It looks unique nevertheless, and an approaching Raider looks like it has twin headlights. In its colors, aggression and the shape of the headlights, the Raider could remind you of a hornet, the insect. But let's just say that it looks very much like the Apache's design theme. It has stubbier rear proportions though, without compromising on any of the utility.
It's quite a functional design as well. I quite like how they've done these grab handles. There are nice recesses here, you can nicely hold on to them. And I'm also told that you can replace these grab handles with optional panniers should you want to go touring. Sure, it's got only a 10-litre tank, but with a claimed fuel economy of 67 kilometers to a litre, I'm guessing a good tank range of at least 450 kilometers should be doable. But more on that with a road test. Even the design of the tank, I think it looks quite appealing. It looked a bit more appealing in the concept sketches, but I think what's come out in the production form looks quite good. The knee recesses are not only very wisely designed, they are also very functional, both for sport riding as well as under braking. And speaking of the brakes, well, you get this pedal disc at the front, but at the rear, you get a drum brake. Now, I was really hoping that TVS would at least have a rear disc brake as an option. I was also hoping that they would provide ABS at least as an option, because this is under 125cc technically. They have gotten away with it, they do not need to do an ABS. But truth be told, in today's dry conditions that we are riding on, it never really felt unnerving under heavy braking. The braking manners are actually quite good. You also get a combined braking system, meaning if you engage the rear brake, it also applies braking pressure at the front, and that also minimizes the dive a little bit. But if you go hard on both the brakes, even with the engine braking or without engine braking, there is a fair bit of nosedive, and you will feel that the suspension is quite squishy under braking.
Because this is, after all, street suspension that's tuned for outright comfort. The front employs 30mm forks with a generous 120mm travel, and there's a good 180mm of ground clearance. The Raider managed to maintain its composure well on the wave and Belgian paved tracks at TVS's facility. Around the bends, the Raider carries pretty quick corner speeds than what its spec might suggest. The tires work well too, and good riders will be able to exploit their grip and the cornering clearance of this motorcycle quite well.
Thankfully, there's plenty of front-end feel despite these really straw-like skinny forks. In fact, even the tires, they have an excellent grip despite their skinny size. These are 80 section. Speaking of the suspension, the rear gets preloaded disc, and it's a little too early for me to talk about the long distance comfort of the suspension or the saddle, and that's because of the short rides that we've been taking on TVS's test track at the moment. So that is something that I'll again point out with a road test. However, out of the box, whatever the suspension setup is, I think it will give good comfort, long distance comfort as well as city commutes. I don't think it's going to disappoint in that sense.
The Raider aims to be unisex with its 780mm seat height, and a light 123 kg curb weight should make it manageable for more shorter as well as newbie riders.
Now to go nitpicking. Not much really, but there are these unfinished kind of lines. There are these gaps, inconsistent gaps in the switchgear. Now all this is not really something that you would complain about much, but because this is in areas where you're going to interact with the motorcycle quite often, it sort of makes me point these out. Otherwise, the rest of the fit and finish is actually quite good.
The Raider's riding posture is marginally forward biased to give it the power commuter credentials. but it should be comfortable for city commutes as well. If you want anything a bit more aggressive, look at the KTM Duke 125 or the Apache RTR 160 or 200. Despite its sporty intent, the Raider seats aren't too narrow either and seem comfortable for the rider and the pillion.
The rear seat is nice and wide, so the Gen Z's parents, friends, they are going to be quite happy with the comfort, hopefully. Also, you get some under-seat storage space, not for your groceries, of course. Your phone should fit in there, but plus-size phones, they don't. So if you have a smaller phone, shouldn't be a problem. Also, I think they've given the USB port here. Instead of that, they should have included the USB port in here. Also given enough space for bigger phones. So that way, it would have been a nice waterproof compartment where you could just leave your phone, let it charge when you are riding long distance or something. Because anyway, you have the option to have Bluetooth telephony. So, it would connect and you would still be able to see who's calling, and, you could control your music and all of that. So that shouldn't have been a problem at all. The placement of the key, however, now that may look a bit ungainly to some, but I think this is a nice utility feature to have.
The Raider may look aggressive then, but it's certainly not intimidating, and that is a good thing for the audience it targets. Even the engine follows suit with its peppy yet friendly performance.
This is a 125 single, and it actually sounds quite good for its configuration. It doesn't have that typical metallic clunk to it. Now it puts out about 11 PS, that's not a lot of power, but it puts it down in a very nice and peppy manner, something that a lot of you are definitely going to enjoy. But the big news for the engine is that it actually comes with two ride modes, Eco and Power. Now this is something that is really going to create headlines for this engine because, come on, I mean, you have even something like a Hyundai i20 N-Line not giving you driving modes, but you get a 125 single with riding modes, and they actually make a lot of difference. Now unlike the RR310, the power outputs are not different in these two modes. It's different maps and a different RPM limit that these two modes will have.
The Eco mode will hit the limiter at 8000 RPM and claims a 3% improvement in fuel economy, which may not sound like much. The Power mode, on the other hand, has marginally quicker throttle response, allows the engine to rev to 8500 RPM, manages a 10% higher top speed, which is around 99 km an hour, and is almost half a second quicker to 60 km an hour with a claim time of 5.9 seconds. Both these figures make the Raider the quickest and the fastest motorcycle in its segment, says TVS.
When you read the spec sheet that it's a 3-valve engine, you might feel it's not advanced enough for the zoomers to zoom around. Well, it's quite an advanced engine for a 125. It's got spring-loaded rocker cams, it's got twin-stage air filtration, it's even got an integrated discrete inbuilt oil cooler system, and it also has the integrated starter generator or ISG. So essentially it's a start-stop system. So what that means is when you come to a halt at maybe a traffic light, the bike will turn off on its own to save fuel and to have cleaner emissions as well. And when you want to go, you simply have to blip the throttle, the engine will come on again, and you can continue with your journey. I think that's a brilliant system to have. A start-stop is something that we've seen on cars, we have seen on some of the motorcycles, and here you have it even on this 125. And I think that's going to contribute to making the fuel economy better. Ask any college student, that is a very important factor.
The start-stop system only works in the Eco mode, of course, and because it has the blip to restart mechanism, it's safer and works even when the engine is in gear. This engine sits as the stressed member in a single cradle frame and has surprisingly good refinement for the spec. The vibrations aren't felt much in the rubber-lined foot pegs, and even the handlebar vibrations are quite well controlled, only becoming evident past the 7000 RPM mark.
Like the RR310, even this one gets the laser cut key, and the instrumentation is actually quite cool. They've done it in a very nice format. They've also color-coded a few things like the red line, like this background here, the fuel warning. It's nicely color-coded. It's a negative LCD. It looks quite nice. Looks a little more advanced than some of the 250cc segment vehicles as well. What I also like is, probably you saw right at the beginning, there is this little flashing helmet that comes up over here. That reminds you to wear a helmet before riding, very important. I quite like this. You also get a trip computer for A, B and F. F is for the fuel, for fuel, so basically when it goes into reserve, it will also tell you how many kilometers you've ridden on reserve. Similarly, you can also see what power mode you are in. This is Eco and now it's on power. So it will also tell you what kind of a riding mode you are in. And if this is not feature rich enough for you, you can also choose a 5-inch TFT display. Very much like the RR310 in terms of its functionality. It's not a vertical screen, it is a horizontal screen, but it comes with the TVS Smart Connect system. So essentially it gives you Bluetooth telephony, music, even navigation. And like the new RR310, it will also let you store your documents in a digital format on the screen itself.
With the optional TFT dash, LED headlamps and the monoshock suspension, the Raider scores high on the perceived value, and that should make it quite appealing not only for the first-timers but also for those looking for a value-for-money commuter with the fabled TVS reliability.
Now I don't know if it's just me, but whenever you get a chance to hear this motorcycle fly by, please do come back to this video and tell me if you think the same. I think in a flyby, this motorcycle sounds very much like the Suzuki Fiero, the 150 from the olden days. I think that sound profile is very similar to that. Anyway, coming back to this motorcycle, I started off saying that this feels like a more economical, more accessible Apache. In fact, it does. In fact, it could easily pass off as an Apache 125 in terms of the features, in terms of the refinement of the engine, in terms of the way it looks. It just feels like a smaller Apache. I think the only reason why they did not call it an Apache 125 is to stop that Apache or prevent that Apache badge from feeling diluted. Now, does it deliver on the promise of being a power commuter for the Gen Z? Well, I think it over-delivers on that. And that actually is a good thing for anyone who is in their 20s and on a budget. And I think it definitely sounds like a Fiero. Do come back to this video and let me know what do you think. Thank you so much for watching.